Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Anshuman here, and I welcome you all to this webinar by Vibrant Networking Forum. We're going to have a discussion on re-energizing the youth, and we have with us two very esteemed speakers, Mr. Vivek Atray and Ms. Jyotsna Mohan. Ms. Jyotsna Mohan is the author of the best-selling book "Stone Shamed Depressed: An Investigation into the Lives of India's Urban Teens." She is a columnist for Gulf News and hosts a show, Table Talk with Joe, on Instagram. She was also a senior anchor and senior editor at NDTV. It's a pleasure to have you with us, ma'am. Welcome to this webinar.
Thank you so much, Anshuman.
And next we have with us Mr. Vivek Atray. We all know him very well. He is the founder of Vibrant Networking Forum. He is an ex-IS officer, a motivational speaker with about 4 million views on YouTube. And as always, sir, it's very good to have you with us.
Thank you, Anshuman. Good to have you as well. And good to see Jyotsna.
I just those YouTube hits, Vivek. What are you doing right?
We will talk about that. We will also talk about how Vivek sir is motivating people from around the world, especially during these tough times, and what has been happening in the last 1 year. We'll be discussing all that. So first, I would like to start this discussion with the opening remarks of both the speakers here. If you could just add a little bit perspective to the topic, re-energizing the youth, for the viewers here. So Jyotsna ma'am, maybe we'll start with you, and after that we'll take Vivek sir's views on that.
Sure, thank you, Anshuman. And welcome everybody. Energizing the youth is great. I think energizing the adults is also needed, and we'll need another session on that, Vivek. Yes, I think we're all in that rut now where it's looking like this thing is never ending, right? I mean, there was hope last year with the fact that we've got the vaccines coming, and now we've got the vaccines coming, and yet there's no end in sight. So I think we all have to dig in deep and figure out how to keep going forward, because that's the only way to go. And Vivek is amazing at that. He gives me many solutions when I need them as well. So yeah, I honestly think that there's a lot to be grateful for in that year for a lot of us. Unfortunately, I mean, I haven't met my family, but then I have to look at the bright side and say, I'm glad they're healthy. But yeah, so it takes a toll on all of us, and it's not been easy for the young ones. I mean, whether you're in college, whether you're a millennial, it's been tough because schools haven't opened, colleges haven't opened, jobs are difficult to come by. But like I said, Vivek is going to give us many more motivational talks on how to keep going forward. And that's what I want to look at myself, I mean, I keep saying, what next, right? I mean, this is a one-way street. We have to keep going on that road, and hopefully we'll reach the end of it, Vivek.
Yeah, I think so. I think, Joe, you really set the ball rolling very well. I think we've been through tough times and we are looking at better times. I think it's all a battle of the mind, apart from those people who have lost people or suffered themselves. And even generally in life, those who go through ups and downs actually are those who deserve to feel low at times. But those who haven't really gone through those lows or those downs or those really bad times and are still feeling low, are still overthinking, are still worrying what might happen to me tomorrow. The sky may fall on my head, as who said that? The chief of the Gauls, right, in Asterix. So the point being that we shouldn't be overthinking. Whatever is coming our way, we have to tackle it and get better as time goes on. And since we're talking about the youth, and you rightly said the adults need more relaunching and re-energizing. But I think with Anshuman here, we'll get a perspective of how young people think. And I guess he's going to ask us all the millennial questions which he wants answers to. So I guess, Anshuman, you want to be like Jyotsna or me in, I'll be flattering to both of us and say about 10, 15 years time. So why don't you learn from us? Go ahead.
Definitely, most definitely. So that's what I'm here for. And just the first question that comes to my mind when I talk about re-energizing the youth is that in the last 1 year, it's been difficult for everyone, no matter what the age, what the gender, what the section of society we are from. It's been difficult for all of us. And we are still not sure if we're out of this pandemic, if we are done with it or not. and we're not sure how long will it continue for. However, one thing that we're sure of is that we have to get used to this and we have to move on with whatever we have, and we have to make use of the best that we have with us right now. So, what would you say to that, ma'am, that still there is a lot of uncertainty in the mind of the young people out there? So, how do we deal with that uncertainty? Because at the end of the day, it's not like this has ended. So, how do we tackle that?
I have actually found that the young ones have been more resilient than the adults, to be honest. And I think it's been remarkable the way they've taken in a lot of what is, they've internalized actually a lot of what is going around. And I'd say that they've resigned to it, but they haven't fussed about it too much. They haven't sat there complaining, ki, we spent our entire first year of college sitting at home, or, spent class 12 not going to school, missing out on that vital year, or people who were meant to go out into the, find themselves a job. But yes, I have found that, mental health has been a big issue for everybody across, and especially the youth as well. And I think that's where we need to, I actually think that for all of us, we need to pause sometimes. We need to not go as fast as we want to continue to do so. We were faster the last year, because it was still the beginning of the pandemic, and we said, thode mahine mein khatam ho jayega. And I think, something as simple as the fact that when there were birthdays last year, we were all very excitedly on Zoom calls and, doing cheers. And now that the second birthdays in the pandemic, I don't think that, I haven't been on a single Zoom call on a birthday this year. So I would honestly say that let's not look for perfection. It's been a hard year. Let's be kind to ourselves. Let's not look for more than we can deliver at this point, because honestly, we're what are we trying to achieve? We're just trying to get out of this, and we're trying to get out of this healthy mind and body. And I think for that, to me, and this is something I tell Vivek a lot, that I've tried to calm down on my work as well. I've tried to calm down on things. I'm watching stupid movies, I'm reading stupid books, even though I know that there's work to do. So I would honestly say, accept that this is what it is, and let's just hope that it's going to get better from here. But in the interim time that it is what it is, don't let it bring you down. Look at what you want to achieve, because once we get out of this, Anshuman, we're all going to be raring to go. So imagine the kind of adrenaline that we're all going to have once we're out of our homes and once we're where we're meant to be.
Got it. Thanks a lot, ma'am. And Vivek sir, I'll just modify the question a little for you. So, the other aspect that has to be recognized with youth here is that we all had plans. I mean, not only young people, but even the not so young people had plans for their lives. We thought that we'll crack this exam, then I'll do this job, I'll go there, I'll do this, I'll do that. And last year, we just hardly made peace with the fact that 2020 is gone, and maybe the next year we'll start our lives back. But then again, now we are still uncertain, and we still don't know how many years or how many months would it take for life to be back to normal, and when I would be able to get back to normal life. So, how can someone deal with that, especially keeping in mind those who are preparing for competitive exams or other things that require time and perseverance?
Yeah, it's a very challenging moment in history. There's no doubt about it. Everyone is at the cusp of something. I mean, you look at a youngster who's looking at a career, competitions, job interviews, looking forward to a degree in maybe studying abroad or studying at a top college in India. And he's at or she's at the cusp of that and on the verge of breaking through. And suddenly you have this 2020 and 2021. And, we were all after lambasting the year 2020 until 2021 came. And there are no jokes about 2021 because how many jokes are you going to make about the year? And we know that the second wave in India, at least, was 100 times worse than what it was last year. So I think we need to be resilient, as Jyotsna said. I mean, we really need to think deeply, draw deeply in our inner strength, and don't overthink. Secondly, don't get into wrong habits. And I know she's going to talk about her book. We have interacted on her book earlier, how the youth have gone into depression, gone into maybe drugs, gone into alcoholism. I know that most of them live in Instagram. I mean, Anshuman probably has taken a, if I let the cat out of the bag, he's taken a conscious decision to withdraw himself from social media quite a bit. Otherwise, most adults and youngsters live on Instagram these days. And so, can we not get too much drawn into things which are probably distracting us from reality? And you're trying to evade reality and face it. So, Yukteswar ji was the guru of Paramahansa Yogananda, the author of the autobiography of a yogi. He said, "Look fear in the face, and it will cease to trouble you." So it may not be as easy as that, but if he says it, I would at least try it. There's something coming your way. It's going to be tough, but there's no point evading it. So you look at it in the face, you face the challenge, you get up with the energy that I'm going to do this to the best of my ability. And to motivate yourself, you need to keep reading, you need to keep watching good videos. And that's why I have 4 million views, because I've kind of duped people into watching my videos to be motivated. But the point is that we need to look towards the sunshine and cannot keep looking at dreary, dark corners of in the alley, And I often say that there's a beautiful wall in front of you, and there's a small little black spot, and you keep worrying about the black spot, or you keep looking at the beautiful wall ahead of you. And there's always something negative to be found if you search for it. But you have to look towards the better side of life. So I think, in a nutshell, I think the approach of a youngster has to be that challenges will come. Life is not easy, and I'm going to fight it. I'm going to do my best, and I'm not going to get drawn into pernicious or negative or destructive things. And there is company at times which is drawing you into that, and you need to avoid those kinds of people who you sense that they are drawing you into something which is not desirable, which is not beneficial for your health or mental health, and don't do it. And draw the line somewhere. Say no. Learn to say no. Just as girls and boys are taught to say no to certain things when they're growing up. Say no to whatever's going to have a harmful effect on your life, and don't just live that moment that okay, dekhi jayegi tomorrow, because that dekhi jayegi, beyond a point it becomes harmful. So we can be adventurous, but not in the negative sense. And you said that don't live with regrets, but we certainly don't need to go on experimenting down the pathway of destruction. So let's not do that. Let's look towards hope and harmony and cheerfulness. I think one more point, creativity is a great answer to our goals. If you are creatively minded, if you have music in your life, you have art in your life, you have poetry in your life, sports in your life, you have photography, astronomy, even astrology, whatever you want to learn or do, get into something new and divert your mind from your career. Do that other thing which makes your heart sing once in a while. So I think this is the approach to life which has worked well for me, especially in recent years, and I think it will work well for most people.
Perfect. So we'll talk a little bit about Jyotsna ma'am's book, which is Stoned, Shamed, Depressed. And ma'am, the question that I have for you here is, of actually speaking, there is a huge marijuana wave going through India right now, and a lot of the youth is getting involved into this. So now that we are in a situation which is not exactly the best situation that we could be in, and if a youth or if a young person gets into drugs or any kind of marijuana or smoking up to escape reality, I mean, do you think that this increases the chances of young people getting involved in such things? And what are the consequences of this? And what is the positive side of this? What would you say to me?
So here's the book. Is it in? So
Yeah, it looks good.
this book, it looks good. It still looks good anyway. It'll always look good to me, Vivek. But yeah, there was a recent report that I read, Anshuman. There was a survey of several schools across the country recently. I think about 6,000 students. And they came to the conclusion that about at least 10% of those students in the ages, I think it was ages class 8 to 10 or something similar, had tried on drugs. And to me, honestly, when I started writing this book, it was a big worry for me because drugs have become very normalized. But then we have to also differentiate between experimenting with drugs and being addicted to drugs. That's completely, as a society, as people who don't like to talk about drugs, it's very easy to bolt it into, if you think of somebody who's tried it under peer pressure, you will just turn around and say, oh, that child is a drug addict. And I've seen it. It's happened in front of my eyes. And that child is turning around and said, I just tried it once because, but the point is that drugs become very casual. And drugs and addiction and everything going forward into the pandemic it's just doubled up, if not more. I don't have statistics, so I can't really say it like that. But from all accounts and all surveys that have come out, things have been pretty bad because everybody is looking for that comfort, anything to hold on to keep going. And I find that if there's something lacking at home, and that I found anyway before the pandemic, when I was writing the book, that that there are people who are holding on to some clutches because they don't have what they want, what they need, or they don't have communication at home. And in these instances, they are clutching on to drugs, they're clutching on to gaming addiction, or social media, and the kind of stuff that goes with it. And the pandemic has just exaggerated everything to a whole different level, right? So I'm not surprised that these kind of surveys are coming. I mean, similarly, even for adults, you've got these surveys coming that domestic abuse has gone up manyfold. So everybody stuck upon addiction, upon revenge porn, these kind of things have gone up a lot. So my this thing is that if you have a stable house, if you have a stable home, you know what you're doing, you know that there's somebody to talk to. And I hope the parents are keeping an eye out on their children, because honestly, we're all very tired right now. But as parents, we can't let go of that responsibility, Anshuman, because if the child is going out looking for drugs, and I've known children who've told me that, yeah, even during the lockdown, we had the drug dealer coming to our gates of the apartment, of the condo, and we were still getting it. And my point is, at some level, it's become so casual. But why has it become so casual? Why is it that we were not strong enough before the pandemic ourselves to have allowed this to infiltrate even more? These are answers that families have to look within themselves. This is a stable grounding, this is lack of communication. And as Vivek said earlier, a lot rides on social media. And it's a thing that I learned myself, to take a step back from social media, because that obsession of being there all the time was getting to me myself during the pandemic. And I was realizing that it's not giving me any positive vibes. So I actually have a day, Saturday, where I am completely off social media, all kinds of social. I do not log in. I barely watch the news. It's just that I'm a journalist and I'm a news junkie. So, at some point I will watch the news, but I don't get onto social media. And the kind of pressure that goes on, the kind of selling of drugs that goes on through social media, all of this is compounded, right, with what you're attracted to. But why are we attracted to it is something that families, society, teachers have to look at these issues. I always tell schools that once the pandemic gets over, and same for colleges. I mean, they can't just say that come to the class and let's teach you and ghanti baj gayi ab ghar jao. No, all of us as larger institutions in the country have to embrace a very holistic way of teaching, of instructing, of learning and living and giving and taking.
Right. Thank you so much, ma'am, for your points. And Vivek, so what would you say to this? That how can a young person stay away from this? Also, considering that the Western culture is at play here when we talk about getting into this casually, because there is a mention of recreational drugs in the Western culture. In fact, a lot of governments have legalized it, and even in India, some state governments are going to legalize the cultivation of these drugs, maybe for medical use, but in the Western culture, it is being used for recreational purposes also. So, what would you say to that, sir? How can someone stay away from that culture, that this is something which is for recreation, and just accept the fact that it is something which is very addictive and can go out of hands very soon?
Yeah, we have a think tank called Suvichar, which has been going into this issue of drugs. And General VP Malik is the chair, and I'm a member. And you know that we've done a lot of motivational webinars as well. So I think the study shows that Punjab, of course, is the worst affected in this region. But these recreational drugs and things like that, I think the government has to be very sensible about them. and it's very difficult to police a country like India. So one has to work on the kids and the youth, and through the schools, the counselors in all institutions, they should be available and talking to the youth, especially now with mental health being a big issue. I think constant communication is the key. And Jyotsna also mentioned that parents who communicate with their kids are obviously more successful in keeping that kid out of harm's way. And I believe our common friend Gitika Sasan and you also had a session on that. And you've been holding these sessions on Joe Talks with medical experts and others I've seen and heard. So the point being that all these people are right thinking, but is it reaching the right quarters? Are we managing to reach that young person who is double-minded, overthinking, depressed, uncertain? Are the parents too busy with their own work and their gadgets and their work from home to talk to others? So one of the issues of the youth today is that parents and the youth don't really communicate enough, and they find that communication with on social media, on chat and stuff, and so talking helps a lot. Conversations help a lot. Drugs will not come if we are able to communicate our feelings, even our anger, our angst, our fears and worries to our parents or our siblings or our friends, and even to counselors. So I think it's a lot to do with letting off steam. And because people don't have time to communicate these days, and whenever they are having dinner or lunch or breakfast, they're all in a hurry to get to the next Zoom meeting or the next StreamYard meeting or whatever it is. So I think it's very tough for people to focus on conversations and listen to each other. I think the parents need to listen to their kids, and the kids need to listen to their parents a little more, and not be snappy and jumpy and just short-tempered or taking people for granted. So one of the things that humanity has learned through this pandemic, especially, is that we've been taking too much for granted. We've taken the planet for granted. We've taken our relationships for granted. We've taken our freedom for granted. Going out for a coffee used to be the easiest thing to do, and you can't do it now. It's only Mr. Zomato who can deliver because he's there. Otherwise, we couldn't have even done that. So, in a nutshell, I think we need to urge the youth to communicate more, and we need people to have more conversations. I mean, we are talking now online and live, and we could have been doing the same, having the same discussion in a drawing room setting, which is not happening. People should be talking and sharing and caring for each other that way. So I think the more we talk, the more we communicate. Even writing therapy is a great way. I mean, I know that my daughter Kavya is into it, as you know. I mean, she's making people write about their whatever feelings are there, and then you can tear up that paper and throw it away or delete that wherever you've written it. So let go of that pressure in a more constructive way than in getting into drugs, etc.
But if I could just add to that, the other thing is that we have to be a little bit more vested into our children's lives, whatever age they may be. For the simple reason, I mean, practically speaking, if a child is telling me, or I mean, by a child, I mean a teenager or somebody in their early 20s who's telling me that they can afford to buy drugs, where's the money coming from? Where is that money to get the synthetic drugs coming from? I understand weed and marijuana, and I understand some stuff is cheaper. I also understand that, okay, if for many of the young ones, it's a rite of passage when you get into college. You've got to try that stuff. Everyone's trying the marijuana, and this is how it is. My point is also about age. You cannot be trying something at 13 versus trying something at 19. That's a huge difference in those ages when you're growing up. And to quote a boy from my book, Anshuman and Vivek, that boy actually told me he started trying, I think he tried marijuana when he was 12 or 13. And his end thing was that, if I had something to hold on to, I wouldn't have tried this. And none of us would have. And that was self-explanatory to me. I mean, what is it that he is missing in his life that he has to hold on to drugs to exist? And why? And unfortunately, I think that as Vivek mentioned, the mental health dilemma is so big right now that it's going to compound all these issues even more.
Yeah, and Anshuman, I'll just add one more thing. It's a bit like two seniors passing the ball to each other and the juniors in the middle trying to catch it.
It's completely okay, sir. Completely.
So sorry, Jyotsna, I called you a senior. But the issue is that people are not even getting too much enough into sports. And we love sports. The three of us love sports. I know that. We have a foundation called Playwright where we urge people to talk about sports. We want them to be more involved in sports. And when you let out your physical energy on outdoors on the sports field, you won't be lying awake till 3:30 at night with your Instagram. And even if you are on Instagram, you'll be more focused on Federer and Berrettini and Ashley Barty and those kinds of guys than on, or even the footballers. I mean, anybody,
Yeah.
but not on drug lords or people who've taken drugs or the wrong kinds of examples. And another thing I'd like to add is even Hollywood or OTT or Bollywood are not doing society a favor by glamorizing the bad guy, by making that hero the murderer. So I've been writing on this ad nauseum. I mean, the good guy and the bad guy and the comedian used to be distinct in movies earlier, and today it's all rolled into one. And they save money on the comedian is out, and
Yeah.
the villain is also out. I think so. It's just the hero and the heroine, and they show shades of which could be reality. But we need people to be there who are icons, who are examples, who are good, people for the youth to follow. So who are the hero worshipping today? Are they hero worshipping Virat Kohli? That's great. But if they're hero worshipping, what's the guy who got arrested, the gangster lord Lawrence Bishnoi or something? I'm naming him. I
Yeah.
hope he doesn't get after me. The point is that guys are worshipping him. Then what are they going to do in life?
No, that's very rightly said, sir. And even scientifically speaking, medically speaking, that the reason why most people are addicted to drugs is because of the dopamine release. So, why most of the people around the world are addicted to cigarettes is because whenever you smoke a cigarette, you get the dopamine release. And similarly with sports, even when you go out to play, when you go out to do a physical activity, when you hang out with your friends, there is a dopamine release and it does the same, it serves the same purpose. So, in fact, this is something that I wanted to talk to you in detail, that if you could just tell our viewers about what are the substitutes. Like, we've talked about how drugs is not okay and how drugs can be addictive and how it is not the right thing. But then what is the right thing to do? So what are the some of the steps that one can take over in daily life to make sure that dopamine release keeps happening every now and then? So, like, for example, I have just taken over this initiative that I have to complete 11,000 to 12,000 steps in a day. So it's just that when I wake up, I walk for about 15-20 minutes and I complete my 3,000 steps. So it is just a motivation for me to do something just when I wake up. So small steps like this, I mean, what can a young person or what can anyone do to feel good about themselves without getting into these things?
I think Jyotsna was saying something.
No, carry on.
Okay. So this 15, 20 minutes, if you do 3,000 steps, Anshuman, I must find out how you do that, because in 20 minutes, I do about 2,000 steps. So I walk slower than you. And I also try to do 10,000 every day, but I end up doing 8 or 9, which is not good. But coming back to your topic, sports, definitely, I need to emphasize that. Even watching sport releases happy hormones. I mean, you mentioned dopamine, there is serotonin, there is oxytocin, there is endorphins, right? These 4 types of happy hormones. And we don't need to know that they are being released. We just need to do those things which make us feel better and which make us, happier and peppier. So sports is definitely one of them. Following sport, watching sport, talking about sport, being involved in sport. And the second is books. I mean, literature, writing, reading, music. Music is something which uplifts your mood even now. I mean, you start playing a song in the show, and we will all feel, on top of the world if it's a good one. And no, don't ask us to sing. I don't know about Jyotsna, but but the point is that music, and then fine art or cooking. I mean, you watch MasterChef, and cooking becomes a whole. MasterChef Australia, I watch only for the fact that they are so creative. They are so creative in the presentation. You never dull. It's never dull. You can watch 100 episodes. They're all different. The items are different. The reactions are different. The conversation is different. So that creativity is what keeps us going. And I think we all need to be indulging in creativity. And since you didn't mention my book yet, let me mention it. So mine is Finding Success Within, and you know about it. Most people know, but this is a book which finds those answers, mentions those answers which you have asked me, and I have 52 chapters in that, and many of them are on what you should do, and of course what you shouldn't do as well. And it's translated into Hindi as well as Safalta Ki Antarik Khoj. So I think finding that success within means finding the answers within. You know better that you know what is good for you. I know what is good for me, and I also know what is not good for me. But as human beings, we get tempted, we indulge. I would say still that if you are 90-10, then it's a good thing. But if you are 10-90, then it's not such a good thing. So you're only doing 10% of what you should be doing and 90% of what you shouldn't be doing. You need to change that. And once in a while, you slip up. You're human. You indulge. You eat too much chocolate or do worse things than that. It's okay. But sometimes you have to take a reality check and say that I'm slipping down this hole. I need to pull myself out.
Got it. Over to you, Jyotsna ma'am. We really want to know that what are the steps that you would give on a daily basis one should
Yeah,
do to feel
that chocolate gets very tempting. A little bit too often. Days back.
That's why I
I
mentioned
agree.
chocolate. That's why I mentioned chocolate. Absolutely.
Oh my God, I was like, well, Dr. Kutu this morning. I wanted to have some ice cream. And I was like, no, thank you. It's so easy, right? to keep. And I know I'm eating a little bit more than, at least than I normally do. But you got to be, like I said, not too tough on yourself. But yeah,
Chocolate is great. It's a great stress buster.
it is, it is. It always is. Stress buster or not. But Anshuman, yeah, so one of the big points that I also had, and I was speaking to some kids on a session a couple of days ago, it's the same thing, it's the outdoors. It's the sport, as Vivek mentioned. For me, it's very, very big. Um, Anything, and these kids were like, how do we get out? What do we do? And at some point, my girls, they read books. They read books every day. They eat their meals with a book in their hand, and then they get tired. And I'm always telling them to get out, go for a walk. And it's very hot. So what do you do? And I'm like, oh my God, it's 45 degrees, but I just need to go out. It's not like I'm getting fresh air. It's not like I'm getting thandi. There is no air. But the point that I can get out, go for a jog, take out my bike, it's much better than staying inside in the cool temperatures, honestly. So anything that works in terms of a sport, whatever is possible at this point, I would highly, highly recommend. I've always recommended sports. To me, that's a way of disciplining yourself. That's a way of, as Vivek said, not getting, you've done your stuff, you're so tired, you're not going to go looking at Instagram. So it works before the pandemic, it works even more after and during the pandemic. Anything that allows you to get up, get out, take out that energy and come back a little bit tired, content. Because there is that whole kind of, at least you feel like you've done something got out of the, you got out of your apartment, great view, but you still need to get out. So I do it. I do as often as I can. It's not often enough, but I do. I go out in the evenings. I go for a run. I take out my bike. It's रात को 8 if I have to. But I feel like, okay, and I try and push my children into the same things. My kids, well, the other one is badminton freak, so she likes to play as much as she can. Uska bas jagah to she won't move out. The younger one, again, that's the thing. You can't force them to do what you want them to do. So that's the other thing. It's a bit of a tricky thing. She doesn't want to play badminton, which is our sport in my house. So I have told her that please choose your sport, but it's not negotiable that you do not play a sport. Choose whatever works for you, but tell me what works for you. And I have always said this to children, to parents who've given their children television sets in their rooms at the age of 6 or an iPad at the age of 6, 7. It's more tiring to get your child out and to make an effort with them to take them for a sport than it is to give them a gadget and say, yeah, just keep busy. But you've got to be, it's your responsibility. And in these times, I think nothing works like this. Reading again, yes, absolutely. I've rediscovered reading during the pandemic. Read whatever you want. You don't want to read things that are pessimistic or they're negative. Don't read. Read whatever works for you. Nobody, like I said, no one's judging you. But yes, the outdoors, wherever you can, the garden, whatever. And reading, being easy on yourself, watching sports, definitely. Cut down on social media, cut down on news as much as you can. Those are really my mantras. That's what keeps me going. Kitchen started, I'll be honest, Vivek, I started with the recipes. And then I'm like, everybody learn it for this. My kids, they started experimenting. And now they only experiment with cookies. It's either the cake or the French fry. This disaster for me, but it's good. I mean, so it's like, whatever works, right, for everybody. But yeah, two things I think are not negotiable is to get a little bit of a sport time and read.
Right.
Anshuman,
So
you have some comments and questions on the comments
yes,
section.
exactly. I have a question from Ashutosh from the audience, and he's asking, how do I convince my peers to quit such habits and lead a meaningful life? So, Vivek, sir, you can take on this first, and after that, we'll have Jyotsna ma'am's opinion on it.
Yeah, see, Ashutosh, there is a saying: if you want to change others, change yourself. Right? I know it's very difficult, but to change others is impossible unless you change yourself and become the example for them and inspire them. This is something you'll find in great thinkers' books as well as in common stories. So you have to be the example and make them want to be like you. You can't go on telling them, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. When you tell someone not to do something, human tendency is to go and do it. And parents are the same. Parents have to be the example for their kids. They can't tell them, okay, now you're 18, don't cross the red light. You've been crossing the red light all your life. You can't tell them that. You can't tell them not to drink or smoke if you drink or smoke in their midst. I mean, how are you going to do that? So I think you have to be the example that you want them to be. And peer as well. I don't think you can change anyone forcibly. You just have to try and impress them with your personality, which is just the opposite of what they are trying to do, and perhaps you're getting better. So not to be immodest, but I remember in engineering college in the final year, I never used to drink, and I don't drink now. And these guys are telling me, Vivek, had one sip of this, whatever it was. It was probably a beer, nothing else. In the final year, Vivek, if you have one sip, we'll go back feeling good that Vivek also had some. So I had a couple of sips. I said, okay, now what is the big deal about that? So they were like, wow, now we're happy. So I'm not saying you have to be fastidious.
Yeah.
You can have a drink once in a while. You can be yourself once in a while. Let your hair down once in a while. Be a good boy and a good girl, but enjoy yourself. But don't. But try and be an example to your friends and younger cousins and siblings as well.
Right. So, Jyotsna ma'am, you've also written about some people who were involved in drugs or are involved in drugs in your book. So, what would you say to this question that Ashutosh has here?
So, I'm going to give an example of my nephew, who is now in his 20s. And every time I was writing the book, I would go to his elder brother and say, tell me, give me some more stories. And he would be like, you go to the younger one. So I said, why? He said, because he's had the rowdiest, the wildest gang of friends. There are five of them. And the four of his friends, I mean, he's the fifth one, the four friends have tried everything, from drugs to you name it, right? Everything, alcohol, drugs, smoking, everything under the sun. So, and I was talking to my nephew, and I said, so how is it that you managed? Now he's like in college or whatever. So he said, there was immense pressure in the beginning, immense. I was the only one standing. All my friends were like, come on, take a sip. He said, I'm not comfortable. I don't want to do it. It's not like I have anything to go home and, I'm not scared, but it's just that I don't want to do it myself. They were like, come on, just try. And he said, now down the line, he said, I never did, or maybe he tried or whatever. He said, I wasn't comfortable, I wasn't going to do it. Now down the line, 3 years, 4 years, whatever later, he was telling me, he said, boy, I still don't do it. What I'm not interested in, I'm not on drugs, I don't smoke, I don't do anything that the rest of them are still doing it. But now every time we go out to a party, and other people come and say, hey, take a drink or take a smoke. He said, the other four, they come like a wall in front of me. And they said, leave him alone. So he said, they know that they're doing wrong. They know what is going on. But he said, at least they're not pushing me. and they actually become like this protective gang, protective of him, and they actually go around and say that it's our bad that we're doing what we're doing, and they are now encouraging everybody else that they need to not go around it. And I've seen that a lot. I saw that a lot in my book, where people were like talking to me about the fact that they know that they're doing drugs, that they're hooked onto it, and yet they're doing a lot of activism against drugs. They say, we know what it does to us, we will tell you not to do it. It's because, for the simple reason, it's not easy to come out of it. So the peer pressure, I know, is enormous. It's enormous. And as Vivek said, everything within limits. I'm not saying drugs within limits, please don't get me wrong. But I would say things like, if you're playing video games, there is no harm. Play it within limits. Know that your pop-ups are safe. Know that the people you're playing with are not strangers who are masquerading as somebody else. When you're on social media, be on social media, but it should not define your life. You shouldn't be on it the whole night. You should not be under that garb of anonymity, cyberbullying somebody, sexually bullying, and uploading that. Do what you feel. Do the right thing, and do everything, as Vivek said, within limits, by all means.
Also, Anshuman, I want to just mention, and Jyotsna very wonderfully well said that, but there's a beautiful comment by Apar Kaushik, which you would like to just read out. I mean, I'll read it out, the main part of it. He says there are many youngsters who want to be like Pablo Escobar, but we have to target sportsmen like Virat Kohli and Sunil Shetty and many more to be like them. So I think that sums up what we're trying to say. Who are we worshipping? Who do we want to be like?
Yeah.
And I mean, the who do we idolize? So I guess Kohli and Chetri have to do a lot more to become heroes in the eyes of these youngsters. I don't know what they're
Right.
doing their best, but we need to have those people to idolize and those personalities.
Yeah, but
Yes.
Kohli is a, you can look at it two ways. I mean, his talent is unmatched, unmatchable, but his conduct, I am not sure that I would tell my children to be him. Because, and as a sports person, it's a dual thing, right? I mean, what is happening in India and cricket team wasn't that bigger than this. But you've got to know, I mean, as recent as now, you're arguing, you're making faces, you have got to make an idol behave like one. To me, he's not always behaved like one. Although, like I said, I mean, there's no better cricketer than him right now.
Right.
Personal opinion. I'm going to
No,
get a
no,
lot
it's
of for
completely
this
okay,
one.
man. And one final question that I have for both of the panelists here, as a Gen Z or a millennial myself, I would like to ask you that how do we set up short-term goals in this year, since we are not sure about how things are going to be? If you could just leave our audience with that how can we um, fix up on short-term goals? So Vivek
Yeah,
sir,
I
maybe
think
we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think goals are something we need to set ourselves every day. Short-term goals are better than long-term goals because you can have the bigger picture in mind, but you have to know what steps you need to take towards that direction. The long-term goal may be to be famous, to be powerful, to be rich, to be well entrenched in your career, which is very vague, isn't it? Vague. You need to have those tangible goals. This year, I'm going to lose this many kilos. This year, I'm going to become that much quicker in my whatever in my race, or I'm going to become a better presenter, a better public speaker, or I'm going to be sharper in my exam preparation. I'm going to finish this exam in 90 minutes instead of 102 minutes, which I take as of now, or I'm going to ace my whatever else test or PPT or whatever I have to do. So I think these short-term goals can be for this particular year. Also, they are to be like any particular year, and you have to set yourself goals which are doable, which are not too difficult, and gradually become more confident.
Perfect. Jyotsna ma'am.
No, I think so. I think earlier I would say baby steps and go one at a time. But now I think as I go along into that this second year, I feel like you have to have some definitive goals in mind. We have to have some kind of discipline as well. Just because you're at home, it doesn't mean jab utho, jab marzi likho, jab. There's got to be a set pattern of this is when you do this, this is when you do this. And I was speaking to a clinical psychologist, and she said this to me, which was very interesting. She said there's something she believes in called the closure ritual. So she says, I get up every day, I'm working from home, but I get up and I dress like I'm going to work. Even for the webinars, I dress like I'm going to work. And when I finish my work, I come back and I change into home clothes. Even though I go from one room to the other, I change into home clothes. It's like I'm done for the day and I'm not going to look at my emails. And she said a lot of her clients actually after that they fix that this is their end time, they fix their training after that, which means that they can't miss the training. So they have to end their work, they have to get into the training, and they're not just sitting idle, which is me most of the time, with just doom scrolling or just scrolling social media. But so I really learned this: have those timeouts, have that fixed goal, go from one to the other. Even if you're at home, figure out this is done for the day, or figure out this is when you need to do this on this day. Because I would always say, oh, I need to write this, but I'll do it when I find time. And I was not getting the time. So now I have like, okay, these days I write this day I write this day I do my shows. And I've tried to set a pattern around it. And I think that really is the only way to go forward right now, because we have to keep thinking that we will get out of this, and we want to be in a position where we're not over ambitious, but let's just say, we should be daring to go once we're out of this. So we at least have a takeoff for it when we get there.
Got it. So it's been an absolute pleasure being in conversation with you, and this topic is something like we can go on this for about 2-3 hours, and I see that a lot of questions and comments have been coming through all this while. So I really hope that the viewers who joined in really benefited from this, and I would just request both the panelists here to take about 1 minute and leave us with their closing remarks on this topic. So Jyotsna ma'am, we can start with you, and then we'll move on to Vivek sir.
I think my biggest learning has been that be kind to yourself, and don't push yourself when you don't need to push yourself. Don't put pressure on yourself. As Vivek knows, I'm constantly putting pressure on myself, and then I'm like, boom, I'm not, I don't feel like doing anything. So I've learned the hard way that just do whatever works for you within limits, but don't not do anything, because I think that kind of then makes us really idle, which is right. I mean, the mind is overworking. So, and my outdoors, I think to me, it has been a blessing to be able to just get out wherever I find a street where I don't find too many people, or whatever time I can get out in the height of summer, I'm doing it. And honestly, I would request you to take out the time. I think because we are all stepping out. If you're going to the market, you can go to the park, or you can just find a street around your house and just run up and down 10 times. And I promise you'll feel better with that. And read good stuff. Read Vivek's book. It's going to give you all the kind of answers that you need. And communicate, talk. I also found this, Anshuman, that a lot of children now begin to say that they're not communicating even more. Before the pandemic, only baat nahi kar rahe the, but now they say that with everything online, we don't feel like talking, and we only call up our friends when we feel like we need an answer, or we need to sort something out work-wise or something, and that's very sad. So keep up with people, because you're going to get out and you're going to come back to these same people. I find relationships are evolving. So if you don't be hard on relationships either, but don't lose relationships too. And be safe and vaccinate.
Okay, over to you, Vivek sir.
No, I think very well summed up, Jyotsna, and I totally agree. And I think, Anshuman, we can probably leave the audience with these thoughts that relaunching yourself or re-energizing yourself means taking baby steps, as was said by Jyotsna. And also, Amit Arora is mentioning in the chat that failure is also important, and he's absolutely right. We learn from obstacles. A child who's learning to walk stumbles, gets up, and then starts off again. When you learn to cycle, you have to fall once or twice, otherwise you can't learn to cycle. So I think it's important to take those little steps with determination. Know that every day is not going to be Sunday, and every day is not going to be as you envisaged it to be. Life is unpredictable, but go with faith in yourself and faith in God, and I'm sure you'll find the right answers. And the second point is what Ritu Nag is mentioning about technology. Yes, it's indispensable, but we need to maintain those relationships, those friendships, those conversations in whatever way we can. In this era of chatting, Even a phone call, I think Jyotsna again mentioned it, is priceless. Because when you talk to someone, you feel all the more fulfilled than you do when you're just texting. At least I do. So that voice is also important. Get on the phone with someone, get on the video with someone instead of just texting all the time, and communicate more, think a little less, and be happy and peppy, and tomorrow will be better than today.
I actually, Vivek, I wrote this. I think by the time I was finishing the book, the pandemic was starting, and I remember you know, I finished it off by saying the very same thing that what we take for granted is going topsy turvy. And I say this to everybody. I want to mention the gadgets, and I always say, of course, gadgets are an intrinsic part of our lives now. It's just that we have to have checks and balances, and we have to check and balance ourselves and our children. It's something we really can't do without. But social isolation, we're seeing the cost of it right now, right? I mean, we are seeing the cost of it on our children. We're seeing the cost of it ourselves when we haven't met families and friends for so long. So never underestimate the whole physical meeting of people, of friends, of relationships. There's a lot. I think it was extremely underestimated, and I think that is something that is being learned the hard way in the last year.
Right. Thank you so much, sir and ma'am. This session has been very insightful personally for me. And for the viewers who have joined us today, Vibrant Networking Forum is a group of CEOs and top professionals. We organize both online and offline events. We also organize speed networking so that you get to meet new people even during the pandemic and you have that human touch sustained. So if you want to become a member, you can get in touch with us on the social media platforms and we would be happy to cater to you. And thank you so much, sir and ma'am, again. It's been an absolute pleasure. And we look forward to having you with us very soon again. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you,
Thank,
Anshuman. Thank you, Jyotsna.
Thank you.
thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.